imagine what the future of humanity could look like in terms of what we're capable of. And when you put people all in the same boat rowing in the same direction, a very powerful thing happens. My goal is to have $1 billion in real estate. So.
All right, welcome back to the Revamp Podcast. Today, super excited. Got somebody that I know, we probably know a lot of the same people, and everybody in the real estate investment world specifically in the Delco, Chesco area knows who you are, Steve Seymour. You also run a real estate meetup as well, right? You have a brokerage.
Yes, sir. Yep. I don't run the meetup anymore, but we still have it going.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's start at the beginning. What was the beginning of your real estate journey? How'd that all happen?
Well, my dad actually was a builder. So my dad's, has been building houses from when he was 24 years old. And he got me, swinging a hammer pretty young. Actually, I think at one point I was 5 years old. He left me with a nail gun.
Nice.
I shot about 1,000 nails into one 2x4, and he just nailed it right to the floor. But so I've been around construction my entire life. That's really probably what kicked it off. And then he always told me, you should buy rentals, you should buy rentals, you should buy rentals. So that sunk in. And then at one point, he was like, hey, you should meet this lady, Teresa, who she's a realtor. So she's a realtor at Long & Foster. I was actually going for civil engineering.
Okay.
And I was about to go to Drexel, met with Teresa. She kind of sold me on the whole idea of selling houses. So I got my real estate license and started at Long & Foster right in media, actually.
So that's like basically freshly out of high school. It's like you're 19 years old or something?
I was finding my way, let's say, in my early 20s. But at 23, I got my real estate license.
Okay.
And I decided not to go back to Drexel. 17 years later now, I don't look back. So I'm pretty grateful I got in the business. But that was getting my real estate license was the catalyst for me getting into flipping, wholesaling, buying rental properties. And then, I can tell you more, but
there's a lot to unpack there, right? But I think people always love to hear like the beginning transition, right? And for a lot of people, that is the first step, is either getting their real estate license or wholesaling or something like that. So for you, going into the retail side first, like, did you do a couple of retail transactions, like helping a buyer or a seller, and then you started going down the investment path?
Yeah, so 2006, I got my license, basically didn't sell anything, I think, for the first 6 months, and then sold just a few houses, maybe a handful of houses my first year. Then by 2007, I bought my first flip.
Okay.
And it was actually... it was a bank-owned property that someone essentially wholesaled to me. They double closed on it, but wholesaled it to me. And that got me into flipping. So, so it was, I did start off with the retail side, but that never really took off for me because I think as soon as I got in the business, I saw, not that, it wasn't for me, but I didn't see anyone that I really looked up to in that space. And I just never saw myself as being a salesman running around with my cell phone glued to my head, chasing clients. I saw it very early on that was not where I wanted to sit. Got
it. So interesting timing though, right? You did your first flip in 2007, huh?
Yes, I did.
So what unfolded from there in the following few years?
It's funny because it's like you only know what you're used to, right? If you grow up in a certain situation, you think that's normal. So I grew up in 2007, 2008, in terms of the real estate industry. So I didn't really know anything different. And being in the office at Long & Foster, I remember all the agents being like, oh, this market's so crappy and there's no deals, nothing's happening. I was just finding deals.
You're like, I'm doing deals.
Yeah, and I started doing short sales. I did my first short sale in 2007. And, I just thought it was normal. So that was before the 2008 crash, right? Because the housing market really, the announcement was like really 2008. And then it really ripple affected 9, 10, 11. That's where I would say 2011, 2012, in my opinion, was where it was the most challenging market. But to me, it was the most opportunity. Now, looking back,
perspective, right?
But I never saw it as like a problem because I didn't know the market from the 2004 to 2006. 2006, I just got in. I didn't have a client base. I wasn't selling, a ton of houses, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't experience that easy roller coaster, right?
Yep.
So I didn't know that there was even a dip.
Dude, I say all the time, like, ignorance can be a really awesome superpower, simply not knowing how hard or challenging something might be. And it's like, all I know is, I'm going to put one foot in front of the other. I don't know all of the ins and outs of this industry or this project or whatever it is. There's some real value in that, because I think there's a lot of different situations that I could look back and reflect on. And it's like, if I knew how challenging that was going to be, I probably never would have done it in the first place. Like, I think I can reflect back and say that on running a wholesale company at scale as well. It's like, man, if I knew how hard it was going to be, if I knew how challenging it was going to be to do it at the level and the scale that I wanted to, I probably would have done things differently. But I'm super glad that I didn't,
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So you said you were doing short sales and some bank-owned stuff in that time period.
Yeah, I did some short sales. I started, doing some bank owned. I actually did a bunch of BPOs, and I did list a few bank properties, but I was also buying them.
Okay.
That was really, to me, where the opportunity was at that time, was in the foreclosure market. I mean, there was a lot of foreclosures back then. And I think every single person looking back would have been like, you should have bought as many as you possibly could. I was too conservative. I didn't want to lose money. So,
Yep. Hindsight, man.
Yep.
Let me ask you, like, back then, was it more so that you were able to have a relationship with asset managers at banks and stuff, or was it still just kind of?
I never really became like the REO agent, right? So,
Okay.
There was definitely more of an opportunity to do that then, but you really'd have to network with the right people. And I was more so looking on the MLS, doing some BPOs through some other third-party companies.
Okay.
Like, what was it, Equator and REO Network, different things like that, where they would just assign them to you. So there's a level of separation with the asset managers.
Got it.
Had I known what I know now, I would have went back to all the regional banks and built relationships with the local regional asset managers or their disposition team to acquire those types of listings. But that was never my like bread and butter. So, I just kept flipping, but we did the same thing you're doing, which is direct mail.
Yep.
And it just, spiraled from finding deals online to going to off-market deals.
Okay. So fast forward a little bit, you're doing some more deals, and how do we bridge the gap between 2012 to today?
Well, so I guess, my first real investing experience, which I don't even look at as investing, I look at as running a business, because if you're wholesaling or flipping, to me, that's not investing. It's really running a business.
Agreed.
And the wholesaling business never really was my bread and butter, but I did flip a lot. I started flipping a decent amount of houses. With the construction background, I kind of had that unique strength in doing that. And, I did okay, did pretty good on flips, but then I realized I always had to go out and get another one. Got to get another one.
Yep.
And, with my dad at the time, like saying, look, you should hold on to a couple properties, that really sunk in at a young age for me. So I did build up a rental portfolio, actually right around here, right in Delco. And I think my first 9 rentals, maybe 9 or 10 rentals were in Delco.
Okay.
And then I got to the point where I was like, I don't want to manage these things. I moved out to Westchester. So I just sold all my rentals out here. But I took that money and rolled it into some property out in Westchester, which is a little better tenant base, a little higher rent, a little more upside in terms of appreciation. But along the way, I still have my real estate license. So I was still always doing a little bit of sales. And I got to the point where what I realized is, in the traditional brokerage world, they don't really support you in investing. If anything, they actually tie your hands. Most brokers don't like wholesalers. It's
true.
Too much liability.
Yep.
And I understand it from both sides.
I do. Yep.
They don't really want their agents flipping houses, because that's a liability when the agent lists it and acts as a principal. They don't also want agents doing off-market deals. right? Because it's against the MLS, agenda. The MLS agenda is to get it all into the MLS.
Yep.
So, it's like opposing forces, right? So I was almost like, you get it put into a conflicting situation where you see the sales end and you see the brokerage side, and then you see the investing side, and you're like, wait, there's a lot more money on the investing side. So what am I doing? And I think it really hit me when I was actually listing some other flippers' houses, and I was like, why am I sitting here doing so much work to help them find a deal? I was even helping them like pick out stuff and maybe line up some contractors, and they're getting like a $30,000-$40,000 check, which, I know it could be a lot bigger than that, but I was getting maybe a $3,000 check.
Yep.
And I'm like, so that hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, I really just got to focus just on the investing side. And because my broker's not empowering me to do that, I need to get my broker's license. So I went out and got my real estate broker's license in, I guess it was actually 2014. No. I got my broker's license 2011 or 12.
Okay.
And then I started my own brokerage in 2014.
Got it.
So we're coming up on 10 years now. It was Vanguard Realty Alliance.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And so Vanguard Realty Alliance, Vanguard meaning at the forefront, Realty, obviously real estate activity, and then Alliance, a group of people that come together for a common cause. So that was at the heart of the name. And now we operate under a DBA VRA Realty.
Love it.
But really the vision and mission is to help empower agents to create wealth on the investing side, not just the transaction side. But understanding that there's value in having a license and access to the MLS and all the tools that we have as realtors as well.
Sure. I love that, man.
Yeah.
So going through that, like, did you just articulated a beautiful vision right now. I have to imagine that vision wasn't as pronounced 10 years ago, right? So like, what was in the back of your mind then? It was really more so just, I don't want to have to be under the governing law of someone else. I want to be able to do my own flips. I want to be able to do my own acquisitions, marketing, and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're spot on, because I think most of us, every action we take is usually reactionary into, solving some sort of existing problem we have, right? Like whatever you're doing tomorrow is probably trying to solve today's problem. And that was my thought process back then, which was I didn't get the support I needed. When I would go take a course, spend $5K about, how to use land trust, subject to deals, seller financing, creative wraparound structures, lease options, right? You go and you immerse yourself in a boot camp, and you come back and your broker's like, you can't do that. Yeah. This is illegal. And then you go to an attorney and they're like, oh, that doesn't work in this state. And you get 10 different answers. But so you have to do a lot of research to really understand what is applicable, what works locally, what is illegal, what's the difference between what's illegal and unethical, and how does that play into the board of realtors. So there's a lot when you when you become a real estate agent in the state of Pennsylvania, you don't have to become a realtor. But most of us, especially at traditional brokerages, choose to become a realtor, which actually ties your hands even more, because now you're governed by the code of ethics, which is voluntary, but you subscribe to it.
Yep.
So just understanding all the intricacies of that, like I like information. So I went out, I got licensed in PA, Delaware, Maryland, and New Jersey. So I have my broker's license in all 4 states, and understanding the different MLS rules and, what can you do from an investing standpoint. So in hindsight, had I just, know what I know now, I would have gone full board investing, never started a brokerage, never even got a real estate license. I think that there's benefits to it, but to me, the cons kind of outweigh it. If you just want to invest. If you want to invest and do sales, then that's a different story.
So what are some of the cons that go hand in hand with that?
Well, probably the biggest thing is operating ethically, right? So I think, like, I'm just a big believer of treat people the way you want to be treated.
Agreed.
And I think you as a wholesaler, like before we started this, you mentioned that like you close on the deal, even if your buyer backs out. That's not how most wholesalers operate.
It's true.
They're all about themselves. So I think you can do it ethically, but it's very borderline and it's a gray area. So let's say me and you, let's say you're a seller and I walk in as a wholesaler, but also as an agent. And Drew, you want to sell me your house. look, I could list it on MLS for 100K.
Yep.
I'll give you 75, right?
Yep.
Which route do you want to go? If I can't sell it to another investor, I will definitely close on it at 75. Drew says, yeah, that's cool. Then that's all good, right? Because that's fully transparent, disclosing that I have a license and I could give you both options. Most agents don't look at it like that. If they're an agent wholesaler, they're not going to go tell the seller what they could get on the retail market, but they have that inside knowledge. They have that expert knowledge. So if you got put in front of a board of, the committee, right, in front of the board of realtors, and they said, did you work in your client's best interest, right? And you didn't educate your client and say, I can get you more money.
Right.
Right. If the client chooses that because they don't want people coming through, they don't want it on the MLS, they don't want pictures, they don't want the neighbors to know, for whatever reason, they don't want to clear it out, they don't want to prep it. I think that that's fine because the client's choosing it. But did you educate the client on what they could really get? Could you maximize it? Because most people at the end of the day just want the most amount of money.
Most people do. I agree. So my question there would be, because I actually don't know where the fine line is, like, because that's a part of it, right? Like you have to be a fiduciary, right? And you have to educate. But like, does that go as deep as I have to tell you what I believe we would be able to list your property for and sell it for?
You don't have to. If you clearly go in, right, and you are licensed and you say, this is my opinion, right? But I've looked at this many different ways. I've talked to attorneys. I've talked to the PA or legal hotline. I've talked to the board of realtors. If there's a little old lady, right, who has no market knowledge of what her house is worth, and she hasn't looked at Zillow, and she has no education, I mean, are you taking advantage of a consumer, or that, consumer before they become a client? You could say, look, I'm a licensed agent. I'm not representing you.
Yep.
You could seek your own representation. That's all legal. It's fine.
Yep.
The thing is it ethical, right? Where you walked in, you could have offered her a different service to list it and really maximize it. And that's all she has. That's all she's going to retire on.
Yep.
And you could get her 30, 40% more.
Yep.
That's where the issue becomes as a realtor. As a wholesaler, there's no issue there. You didn't sign up for the code of ethics. And I'm not saying that you operate unethically. I believe you do. I wouldn't be sitting here with you if I thought you were, a shitty person and took advantage of people. But that's where it's a gray area.
But and that's kind of a key point, though, because a lot of the wholesale industry, by and large, operates like that. It's almost like a lot of trainings and courses and gurus that I've seen over the years. It's like they almost not just like perpetuate. They kind of honor being dishonest, right? And the fact of the matter is, it's easier to omit truths and be dishonest and be able to do a deal. It's easier. But yeah, I mean, I like to be able to sleep at night and know that I do good business, and that generally the people that work with us, whether they're sellers, buyers, or anybody else, are going to have a good experience, and they're going to have a good word to share after the fact,
Absolutely. And I think in the end, in the long run, no matter what, if you do good business, you're gonna have longevity. If you act like that, like you're gonna get sued. One of the family members is going to come after you.
Yep.
Something if you're taking advantage of people.
Totally agree.
With that said, everyone in this business talks about win-win negotiation, right? And I'm a huge proponent of win-win. If it's not a win-win, let's walk away, right? Like if it doesn't work for you and doesn't work for me, let's not do business at all. With that said, when it's like, who are you negotiating? Which are you negotiating for yourself or for that client right off the bat?
Sure.
So if you are clear in the communication and put it in writing right away that your intent is to buy the house and you have no representation, I think an agent could do that pretty fairly.
Yeah.
On the other side of that, if they educate them on what they could get and then they choose. So that's kind of, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but that's when you ask my take on it. I could dive super deep with it.
That makes a lot of sense. It's funny. One of the first things that we say to a seller when we're on the phone with them, before we know almost anything at all, like, one of the first 3 questions that we ask is, have you considered listing your house? And whatever they say, we'll go deeper into that. But if The point that we're trying to drill home is if top dollar is most important to you, we're
It's
not
for
your
you.
guy.
Right.
Like that's fine. We
and that's
have a
great.
set of specialty services that we offer. And if the most important thing to you is price, that's totally fine. I'll point you in the right direction.
Yeah.
But that's not what we offer,
Right.
right? A lot of people think that that's like counterintuitive and it's kind of shooting yourself in the foot. I don't think so at all, because we don't want to spend 45 minutes on the phone with somebody
No.
and then go out to see a property where somebody's expectations are not aligned with what we do,
Yeah.
you know? So push them away,
Yeah.
so to speak.
So
and
going
if that's
back
not
to your
fitting,
point, most wholesalers just aren't as transparent as you. They're not. They're not upfront. And at least what I've seen as a whole, so many wholesalers go in with the idea to, I've literally heard one of them say, like, cut their throat. Like
yeah.
that is the terminology he said. Like, it's just, I'm like, okay, that's great, but you got to look at both sides of it, because we're in the people business and I see it all the time. People get taken advantage of. So just try to do the right thing, and it tends to all work out. But
I agree.
so on from that topic.
So fast forward, right? So you start growing the brokerage then, right? Like, what gave you the inspiration to do that?
In all honesty, like the brokerage, I never really intended to grow. But, you mentioned I used to lead the real estate meetup. What I noticed is what I had already said, is there's a huge gap between that traditional model and the investing model. And most people just don't get the correlation.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, when I started talking to some agents, well, number one, they would basically come to the meetup and be like, oh, you have your broker's license and you know how to do subject to deals and you know how to create seller finance deals and you know how to do all this creative structure and private money and hard money and you flip houses and find off market deals. They wanted to learn that.
Yep.
And they didn't want to go pay the gurus thousands of dollars, bring it back to their broker, and then feel like it's a waste of money.
Yep.
So I felt like I was helping, give that information and then have a healthy balance of what's honest, ethical. How do you do it as a real estate agent?
Got it.
And with that, the vision grew when I started seeing people become wealthy in real estate. So, my vision now is to create 100 accredited investors. We have like 105 agents now, and over 50% of them own rental properties.
I love that.
That's pretty solid. With that, I don't know the exact number, but I would guess that we have at least 20 accredited investors, which means, we've helped create millionaires.
Yeah.
And not all of them can, I'm not saying that we've done it all because they did it, but, having a network of resources and available to help people create
to have
wealth.
that environment where people can grow is critical. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, think about it from a broker standpoint. If your agents become wealthy and they have rental properties, how motivated are they to go to sell houses? Not that motivated.
True.
So it's kind of counterintuitive, and I'm not going to toot my horn and say I'm doing it completely selflessly, but it's 100% not for the money. There's no money in the real estate brokerage business. It's really creating a large network of people rowing in the same direction, all going towards the same thing. And there's power in that, and I'm grateful for it, and I get a lot of other inherent benefits from it. But the vision is really to grow to 1,000 agents in the region.
Okay.
Have 100 accredited investors and really become the first nationally known real estate brokerage that helps agents create wealth, like long-term, lasting, generational wealth in real estate. And, just like I said, bridge that gap.
Dude, I love that. I love that. To define the term, because I'm sure some people listening have heard the term accredited investor, but don't know what it actually means.
Well, I'll go back and say, how everyone, I don't want to say poor, but like everyone with the poor mindset says, oh, the wealthy are always becoming wealthier, right? And the poor are becoming poorer, which maybe there's some truth to that. But in reality, there are certain investments that only the wealthy can make, right? You can't invest into an accredited investor fund if you're not an accredited investor. So the IRS deems it as if you have $1 million in net worth, excluding your primary residence, or if you make $200,000 as an individual, or I think it's 203. It's either 250 and 300 or 200 and 300, but as an individual versus filing jointly. So if you make enough cash on an annual basis, that they're saying you're smart enough to invest your money into these things,
You're
right?
sophisticated.
You're sophisticated enough. And if you're, or if you've displayed your ability to increase your net worth to over $1 million, excluding your primary, you're sophisticated enough. So now you can invest into other options. And, you know, as you grow in building rental portfolios or flipping or wholesaling, you do realize that that's all kind of a grind, and none of that real estate investing is actually passive investing.
My God.
Right. So as you
I hate even hearing that anymore, especially from people that are trying to get started, trying to get involved, and they're like, I want to buy rentals because I want to have passive income. It's like, buddy, go find another way, because this is not it. You can build wealth, no question about it. I have built most of my wealth through rental properties, you know, but it is not passive.
It is not at all. And even if you have a property manager, it's still not passive, because you're going to get pulled into it. Obviously, like if you get to, you know, you buy a 100-unit apartment building, you have on-site management and professional, like really quality professional management. It's probably pretty passive. Or you have a triple net lease.
But
on
most
a
people aren't
Wawa,
starting there. Most people are not starting by buying a 100-unit building in one
Correct.
place. They don't have the connections. They don't have the money. They don't have the resources, and they don't have the know-how.
Yeah,
So it's kind of like a step-by-step process getting there, right?
It is. And resident, I think, so to me, the end goal is to be on the paper side of the business and then triple net leases, right? So,
Okay.
you know, if the tenant's fully responsible, if you own Starbucks, Wawa, you're not getting calls at, you know, at 2 o'clock in the morning because the toilet's not working, or
Right.
you're not getting a call from the township. You know, you're essentially, not that I want to own Wawa and Starbucks, but I'm using that as an example.
Sure.
Those are so low returns that's just, you know, mailbox money. If you
That's what I was going to say. It's a totally different game as well, right? Because most people that I know that are, call it full-time in real estate investing in some capacity, whether they're aggressively building a rental portfolio or they're doing, you know, 20, 30, 50 flips a year, or they're wholesaling houses, but that's all that they do is their primary income. It's not just the goal of being able to get a 5%, 10%, or even 20% return on their money. They
Right.
need to make significantly higher than that. And it's different. It's very different.
Yeah, because you have to not only make a return on your investment, but you have to make a return on your time.
Yeah.
Because if you're actively working in it, what is your time worth? What's your pay time activities, and how much could you get paid in some other area or industry?
That's right.
Is it even better? So, you know, what I've seen and the direction that I'm heading more is on the lending side, you know, just lending out money. So if anyone's looking for money, you know, reach out, but, you know, be on the capital side, help other investors do what I've done. There's some people that really poured into me and invested their money with me. That's helped me tremendously. So I want to do the same thing because I get fulfillment from that. It's more scalable, and you really get to make a difference for them.
I love that.
And then, you know, help put together some much bigger deals, but not have everything. You know, I'd rather have a larger pie with a smaller piece and have the right people and the right team to run it, so that you can do, you can scale it.
I love that, man. I love that. So let's take a step back real quick. What was the first like creative finance deal that you did?
Oh, and I don't think number one, when I say creative finance, I don't want to ever say it's creative, because there's not much that has been created. It's all been ripped off and duplicated.
Fair.
But I would say, I'm not sure this is the first one. Yeah, I think my first Subject 2 deal was a Chester deal, but I don't remember all the details of it. But it was there was another one actually local, Sharon Hill. It was a nurse who bought a house for her son. For her son to live in. He was getting engaged. Him and his fiance moved in. They broke up. She turned it to a rental property, and she was just so fed up with being a landlord, they kind of tore it up. I believe the debt on it was like, don't quote me on this, but it was around like, say, $36K. Right?
Okay.
And it needed some work. And at the time, the market was not great. She was getting cash offers at like 30 from investors. Fixed up, the house was probably worth 50. You know, and because I had the construction background, I was like, I can do this for way less than 20 anyway. But she didn't want to sell it for less than what was owed. So I took over the debt at the exact amount, which was the 36,000. Like, I didn't pay her anything above it because she was fine. All she wanted was to not
get
have,
rid of it.
Yeah, she didn't want to have to. Her pain point was that monthly payment. she wasn't going to sell it for more than that. And then if she listed it by the time she paid an agent, she was still going to get the cash offers because it just needed work, right? So we closed on it, and I actually asked her if she would be willing to pay 1 month of the mortgage payment. So I actually had like a month before I had anything outlaid except for my title insurance and transfer tax. I think I got in the house for like under $2K, right?
Love it.
And then put the materials on my Home Depot card. I did the work myself, turned it around in a month, had it rented for $1,100, I believe. And I think the PITI on it was the principal, interest, taxes, insurance was like $600 a month.
Okay.
Right. So cash flow, that thing held it for a few years. I think I sold it for like, I don't know, 70 maybe.
Okay.
So it wasn't like a home run deal, but it was a way to get in,
Yep.
with a Home Depot credit card and $2K in my bank account.
Yep.
I was able to get into something and not have any real cash drag while I fixed it up, because I did it real fast, get it listed, for rent, had it rented out right away. And, within a month I had a cash flowing asset.
So obviously, like, sub 2 is aggressively being talked about now,
It
right?
is.
Like everybody and their mother is
Yeah, but
talking about it, and it kind of makes sense.
I think that was
to a degree.
2009, so I've been doing them for a long time.
Yeah. So what's your perspective? What's your philosophy on them today? Having done what you've done, seen what you've seen.
It just has to be the right scenario. It's like a needle in the haystack, but if you find it, they're great. I mean, most of the time, especially as I was saying before, like working in the client's best interest, right? So if I have the ability to list and sell the house and they can get out of it with cash, subject to deals, for me, like, that doesn't make sense for the seller, right?
Yeah.
It could be great for me, especially if they locked in a rate 2 years ago. But like, I'll tell you about another one that the scenario was, this is in Westchester, actually. It's a condo, and I bought it in my self-directed Roth IRA. Okay. So she had it as a rental. First, it was her primary. She moved out, kept it as a rental property. And the tenant was kind of tearing the place up. But over time, she just didn't want to be a landlord anymore. Bottom line, her pain point was she was moving to France to get her daughter into this dance school. And she told me she didn't want to own any houses anymore. She was like probably early 60s, late 50s. I don't know. I'm just guessing. But, I think you have to like have a conversation with the owner to see what's next in their life. Mm-hmm. And she was like, I'm not coming back to the U.S. She's like, I don't care about my DTI, her debt to income ratios. My biggest thing was I didn't want to take on her property subject to and then have her want to go buy a house in 6 months.
Right.
And then her calling me like, hey, why didn't you tell me this is going to affect my credit? So I explained it all to her, and she's like, yeah, your credit's better than mine already. I showed her my credit and her credit. Like, we went through the whole thing. I was able to get her the $13K she wanted to get her daughter in the art school, but I was able to take over her interest rate at 3.25% on a 30-year loan that she paid on for 16 years.
Yep.
So I got a 30-year amortization with a 14-year remaining on it, instant cash flow. And, I know there's some other ramifications or implications with, doing it in a self-directed IRA because of the debt. So I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's like unrelated business finance debt tax.
I'm not, no.
So it's kind of like UBIT. So UBIT's like unrelated business income tax. But basically, if you finance something in your retirement account, if you use leverage, then you're subject to this tax. So the upside is once you're subject to that tax, then you can actually go back and you can take all the offsets for real estate. Because typically, let's say you buy a rental, typically in your IRA, you can't use the standard deductions. Like, you can't write off your interest, you can't write off your taxes, insurance, because you don't have any income, so you don't have anything to expense against.
Got it.
Because I'm not saying you don't have any income, but you're not, if it's in a Roth IRA.
Yeah, it's not taxes.
Right, so you're not getting any benefit of that.
Yep.
So when the unrelated business finance debt tax kicks in, you can now use your depreciation. You can use all the tax benefits.
Interesting.
So because a lot of people say don't finance something, But for me, I was able to get, a $270,000 asset into my self-directed Roth IRA for 17 grand out of pocket.
Yeah.
Between paying her the 13 grand and then the closing costs, have it cash flow, and then now I'm building a tax-free retirement account. And then the best part is that it's Section 8, so it's the government is financing my retirement account. And that's my favorite part of the story because everyone's like, you can't rely on Social Security. So
Yeah.
So that's the kind of creative deals that I like to try to structure with subject to. But again, it's like a unique scenario.
Sure. I totally agree. I think the reason that I have a bad taste in my mouth about sub 2 is because everything that I'm seeing now, and I've still never done one to this day. I just, and having done hundreds of deals, I have not seen one where it's like that made the most sense for all parties involved. So I never went down that path. But I like the strategy, I like the tool, but I hate the way that it's being framed and positioned right now because it's being positioned as get into real estate even if you have no money. And I don't like that, man. I think that's a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe to hurt sellers, right? Like somebody that doesn't have $5,000 in their savings to even put a down payment on a property to come to you and say, I'm going to take over the payments and I'm going to take over your mortgage with the intention that the tenant's going to pay rent and like I'm going to have cash flow. Well, as soon as something goes wrong, the whole thing is fucked, right?
It is.
I think that's bad. That's wrong.
Absolutely.
You got to have money.
It's similar to like what was going on maybe, I don't want to say 8 to 10 years ago with lease options.
Yeah.
Right? Lease purchase, lease options, rent to own, that became a big thing. I will say, in my opinion, we're in an amazing market cycle to do a subject to.
Yeah, I agree.
Probably the riskiest for the due on sale clause, especially with like regional banks, because if you take over someone's debt, then the bank does have the right to call the loan due. That's probably the biggest risk in my opinion. Other than what you were saying, if someone can't perform on their end, if the buyer can't perform, that's obvious.
And there's ways to shield yourself against that as well, like trust, and like owning the property in a trust, right? Things like that.
So this, I think it's like the St. Germain Act. It's if you put a property into a trust for estate planning purposes, there's a federal exemption against the due on sale clause. But it's really kind of like a trick because
they just
no
can't
one's
really identify who you are.
Correct. Like it's not like when I'm buying it from someone else, that's part of their estate planning process. It's just that if the bank researches it, there's an extra layer, but that gets complex as well. And then you have the property in a trust, which sometimes can be harder to refinance it. So to me, I don't go that route. I just have full disclosure. I always have the ability to refinance it out. I always make sure there's enough equity that I could refi it.
That makes sense.
Or I have some other strategy. Like I like to have multiple exit strategies. If you have multiple exit strategies and you know what your exit is, then you can't really get hurt.
Totally agree.
Sorry, I go off on the creative finance stuff.
No, this is perfect. This is great. I think it's educational. It's things that a lot of people wonder about and everything.
But to your point, subject to is way blown out of proportion. It's not easy to find subject to deals. They're few and far between. If you do find them, you really need someone that knows their shit to walk you through it.
Right.
And just taking a course, know someone locally that actually has done them and can walk you through the insurance, because the insurance becomes an issue. How are you going to do the payments? What if the person dies and you can't get them to do, you can't get them to execute on even a mortgage payoff, right? Or you can't communicate with the bank. You need to have power of attorney in place. There's a lot of things that you need to put in place. And there's also ways you can de-risk it for the seller in a lot of different areas in terms of just ways that if you defaulted, they could take the property back.
Okay.
Like there's ways that you can structure it so that it's much more fair for both parties.
But I would have to venture to say that most people that are trying to get in, they're not even in real estate yet, and they just bought a course from somebody on doing sub 2, they're probably not looking at it like that. They're not looking at it as, I want to protect you, the seller. They're looking at it as, I want to get into this deal for as little as humanly possible.
Absolutely, yeah.
I can buy a house with no money down, baby. Let's go.
Yeah, and I heard Pace Morby talk. I was at Bigger Pockets, last October. I plan to go this October. Pace seems like a great guy, and he's good at marketing himself. It's just, when you actually go to do it, nothing looks like as simple as it seems.
Of course.
And I've actually gone through the paperwork because we got an offer on a listing, one of our listings at my brokerage, and the agent was like, what is this whole subject to thing? So I reviewed all the paperwork, and it's packaged nicely. I mean, I think the way he's doing it makes sense. It's all the logistics to get through the deal and navigate it properly.
What do you think about the current market?
In terms of what? Give me
Overall, just, I mean, big picture, right? Economy, real estate market, pricing, jobs, the NAR lawsuit, all of it. Big picture real estate market today.
That's like a multiple.
A lot of things lumped into
question.
one, but really that's where we're at, right? It's like there are a lot of crazy things happening right now.
So in terms of, we're in the Philadelphia suburbs, right? I think every market's very local. Even since when I was in, like I said, 2008, and people were like, everything on the news was like doom and gloom. We did have foreclosures here, but we didn't see anything compared to like Arizona or California or, other markets. So real estate is extremely cyclical. Even in a down market, you're going to have areas that go up in value because it's called supply and demand. It's business 101. So everyone gets all in a frenzy trying to figure out the whole world. What's going to happen? Is our currency going to, be some digital Chinese currency? Who knows? I came back from fund launch down in Orlando about 2 weeks ago, and there was a global strategist there. And he had such a good outlook on the way things are, in my opinion, from where I've, even during the pandemic, I had such a negative view as where this country was going. I have a much more positive outlook now, but locally in our market, shortage of inventory. We're still approximately 5 million homes short nationwide. That's not going to change. Affordability is a major issue. Interest rates are high. They're not going to just drop back down to where they were. They can't. They have to inflate away the debt. We're probably in an environment where taxes will go up and we'll see inflation, right? That's pretty obvious. Energy costs are going to go up. That's pretty obvious. It's going to happen. From my understanding, big picture globally, we're actually going to come into the third industrial revolution in this country, which is extremely exciting to me, where a lot of things have been offshoring. Like the last 40 years have been offshoring jobs to anywhere that was cheaper labor. Now, through technology, innovation, and automation, we're going to be able to onshore more. And we don't have a great population growth, but comparatively to like China or Thailand or other countries that, they're in a lot worse position than we are. So yes, the global economy is probably not in a great position, and our economy doesn't look like we're in the best position. But in reality, from what I understand and what I know and the people that I talk to, because I'm not an expert on any of these subjects. I listen to people that I like, know, and trust. We're in a great position. We're, nationally or internationally, we're in such a strong position. The U.S. dollar is still really strong. Yes, our debt is out of control, and it's going to continue to go. I mean, if you Google U.S. debt clock, I don't know if you've ever looked at that thing.
Ridiculous.
But just look at the U.S. debt clock for like 2 minutes, and you're going to be like, holy shit, I just went in more debt because I'm a U.S. citizen.
Yeah.
We're still better off than everywhere else. It's still...
Which is interesting in itself.
Like, yes, there's emerging markets, Southeast Asia. There's other places that might have more... growth, but we're still a powerhouse. And there's, I think we have really good technology. I don't know. I believe in the United States. I've become more and more patriotic. I'm big on freedom. That's why I'm in entrepreneurship. I think that the human spirit wants to release through, a self-expression of what we do in our lives. And any entrepreneur is, if there's no one that's in entrepreneurship really without some strong drive for freedom.
Totally
and that's
agree.
what this country's based on. So I think that we just have, I don't know, we're in a good spot. But locally, look, find out where the inventory is coming from. It's going to be the baby boomer population. New construction would be great, but where are you going to build around here? Right. There's only infill lots in Delco. Like there's no big communities getting developed here that you can really increase the inventory to a substantial amount that will actually affect the market.
Yep.
But, there's other parts like, I definitely believe, I know Texas, certain markets have come down and maybe some home prices leveled out or flattened out. But I think as a long haul, Texas, Florida are super strong. I think this area is pretty solid. I don't think it's going to go up or down any major amount. I think we'll see a steady increase over time. Just we have the meds and eds with all, the medical and education in the Northeast.
Meds and eds, I like that.
Yeah, the meds and eds, man. It's going to keep this area really strong and steady. Everyone's always looking for the highest return, but real estate wealth is made over time. So I'm still a big proponent of investing in this area. We're not going to go chase all the crazy returns they're getting on the Sun Belt, because those are going to go down over the next year or so compared to where they were.
Yep.
But they'll be back because the, migration patterns and people moving that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And jobs.
Take it a step back real quick.
Did
Did
that cover most of your questions?
No.
The only other one was the NAR lawsuit.
NAR, yeah, which we'll definitely touch on. But I've never heard anyone mention that AI and tech and kind of where we're at with, I think you use the term, the next industrial revolution, right? And that bringing jobs back. Elaborate on that, because I do a lot of things related to tech, and I have AI integrated into a lot of things. And I think majorly the fear for most people that don't understand the technology side much at all is just that it's going to take jobs away. It's going to eradicate the need for a lot of positions.
I believe it'll change jobs, right? Like well, just think, for instance, and look, I'm not an economist. I don't know all this stuff, and I don't even know much about.
But you're interconnected.
I'm a big
to
picture
a lot
thinker.
Of things.
I don't know like the integrate. I don't know much about AI, right? I don't even use AI. It gets used in my business because other people are using it, but I don't personally use it because I don't want to use it.
You should. It's pretty awesome.
Well, I'm still getting the benefit from it from other people.
I know,
right?
Which is beautiful.
But I don't want to. So my point is, at least from my understanding, a lot of the jobs went overseas because of cheap labor. And, if you think about how much stuff we buy that gets imported from China,
yep,
as an example, many other places, it's because of cheap labor. So from my understanding, their population growth has been shrinking, and that cheap labor shortage is kind of going away in a sense.
Yeah.
And the cost for us to have raw materials and we can build something here with some robotics and AI technology, it's way better. So even if that creates a few jobs versus a warehouse of hundreds, we're bringing stuff back.
That makes sense.
That's the point. And then that increases our independence from other countries, which makes us stronger. I talk to a lot of international investors. I talked to a guy who's building in Dubai, right? This guy has 7 billion assets under management, and he's developing in Dubai. And he was, that's like a strong market. There's a lot of people fleeing from like Eastern Europeans are going to Dubai for some reason. I don't know why, but they're going there.
I know a lot of Americans going to Dubai, so yeah.
Yeah, and it's developing. People want to be there. Well, we've had that for a long time, and I'm not saying that it's not going to continue, but I think it will continue to a degree where people want to be in America, people want to invest here. There's something that is psychologically very solid for other foreign investors to invest here. I know a lady that raises money from China. The Chinese that have a lot of money, that are wealthy, they don't really want to invest it in China.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you just think about that all coming back.
Yep.
Which, and then a lot of people complain about all the immigration, but that's where a lot of the cheap labor is coming from.
Right.
So as long as it's done properly and, you allow people to immigrate legally and pay taxes and be a contribution to society, I'm all for it as long as it's done in the right way.
Yep.
But we need population growth because every economy, if you look at it, it's basically a pyramid scheme.
Fair.
That's how Social Security was built, right?
Yep.
The whole idea was
that's how
there
almost
was going to be
everything is built.
Yeah, there was going to be like 10 people paying for everyone.
Yep.
Right? Every organization, you have some level of hierarchy, whatever you want to call it. So I see that, this country having, I'm not saying just let anyone and everyone in, but that's what's made this country strong. We're all immigrants.
Yeah.
Everyone that
Totally
came here
agree.
as immigrants. So people are so short-sighted in looking at it. And what you don't want is a negative population growth with people fleeing the country because of bad government.
Yeah.
And I understand a lot of politics. We're not going to go down that path right now, and I'm not thrilled with the politics in this country. I'll say that. What we have is still better than a lot of other places.
Yep.
Look at me and you. We each have our own small business. We're running our small business. I'm sure you have a lot of flexibility and freedom in your life. You get to create a family and, do something that you probably couldn't do in a lot of other countries. Not as easily as this, at least.
Agreed. I totally agree. And like you said, I mean, I am by no means an expert in any of these topics, but I look into them and I research them because, and it's funny because as is true in most things, the more that I've learned, the more I realize that I don't know shit.
Me too. And I don't want to sound like an
totally
expert.
true on economics, right? The deeper I go, I'm like, wow, I know nothing. But what's really crazy is the deeper I go, I realize that nobody seemingly knows anything. But it all matters because taking it back to a local level, right? To make the connection like of how I've seen it start to impact like my rental properties and everything. We had some tenants that were with us for 5 years. Not only were always on time pay and everything, but they were just genuinely good people and everything, right? But when you take good people and you put them in a bad situation and income isn't going up and expenses are, food is, transportation is, everything is, we had a lot of people that just simply couldn't afford rent anymore, So what we started doing in the last year and a half is when we do have turnovers, we're switching over to Section 8 and government programs on a lot of our, units to try to have some form of a guaranteed income.
Look, for anyone that has a JOB, just over broke, as a job, right? That's what it like really, Robert Kiyosaki mindset. If you have a job, inflation's tough because your wages probably aren't keeping up. And they probably won't.
Yep.
Inflation it is what it is. 40% of all the money that's in circulation was printed since 2020.
Which is crazy.
Right? In 4 years, and if you supply and demand, how do you devalue something? Increase the supply. If you devalue the money, then the consumer price index is going to go up.
Yep.
So the government is definitely trying to put a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound and slow it down as much as possible, but it's not going to stop. And, once rates do come back a little bit, you're going to see prices climb more. The reason I'm optimistic is because I'm in real estate and I'm an entrepreneur and there's opportunity and change. So we have to continue to change and innovate. A lot of people are pushed right now, but that's what this is. And anytime there's ever been any major evolution with humanity, it's when they get squeezed, right? So
very true.
So some people are going to get ahead and some people won't, and that's capitalism. And I don't want to sound insensitive to people that are struggling, but that's why you should be educating yourself on financial education, how to invest in real estate, how to be an entrepreneur and build your own business, so you can get paid based upon what your value is versus what you're getting from an employee as an employer. I'm all for small business. I think if small business thrives, we're in better shape. I think our bigger threat is big business with lots of technology,
Yeah. So you mentioned like educating yourself to understand all these things. And I heard you mention earlier, like going to boot camps and seminars and stuff like that. So obviously you're a believer in self-education.
I've invested well over $100K in my own real estate investing education.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well over.
I don't doubt that at all.
So
it's not hard to do.
No, it's not. But to invest like $5,000 and go to a boot camp.
Think about ROI.
Yeah.
Right?
One deal pays for it, and then you have that skill set for the rest of your life. And one deal could pay for it 10 times over.
I totally agree. And that's been my mindset. I've invested so much, not in just courses and stuff like that, but I'm a big believer in mentors. I've had a lot of mentors. Like, dude, in 1 year, I spend still probably more than a lot of people with the W-2 make. Like, it's crazy. But you know what my ROI on that has been? Well, the answer is it's fucking infinite, Yeah. It's like, because not only did it get me to where I am today, I have the horsepower to generate a lot of opportunity, a lot of deals, a lot of revenue, a lot of wealth, not just for me, but for other people. And, it's hard to even really put a number on that. One of the things that I kind of look at for myself, and it's tough because there's no real way I don't think there's a good way that I've determined for myself to measure, but just impact. Like I want to make a difference, while I'm here. None of us know how much longer we really have, but I want to make a difference while I'm here. And I can't say that I've done that yet, but I can definitely say that I'm walking the right path.
I would bet you've impacted a lot more people than you know, because I've had that same experience where, you feel like you're not having a major impact, but then later on, and there's so many times that you have impact, you'll never know. It's
Yep.
like the butterfly effect. The thing with that is, and I've interviewed a lot of really successful people. Tony Robbins talks about this, right? A lot of people are really after they're just after success and achievement, right? It's like achieve, produce, success. But what ultimately people want is they want fulfillment.
Right.
It's almost like a delusion.
Yep.
They believe that they'll be fulfilled when they become successful. And I've had this happen at multiple different milestones in my life where I thought, once I get here, then I'm going to be happy. Then I'm going to feel good, right? So what you're talking about impact is what I've found is you get so much more fulfillment from the impact that you make in other people
Yep.
versus the success you have.
Yep.
The successes to me are almost more of a measure. It's kind of, we live in a weird society where, you'll listen to someone more heavily if they're successful.
Yep.
Right? The person that has no money in their bank giving you financial advice, you're going to kind of block it out. But if someone's really financially well off and they give you the same exact advice, you're going to listen. And that to me is actually why I chase the success and the achievement, is so that I can leverage it for impact
Totally.
on others. Like it's almost just so that people
That makes
will be
perfect sense.
yeah. And as someone that sees that if I make a difference and help other people achieve what they want, I get that back too.
Totally agree. So I do want to touch on the NAR lawsuit. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we'll see where things shake out. My thoughts are, and I've talked to a bunch of brokers and been in some, think tank rooms with different people. There's a lot of different opinions. Big picture, the real estate commissions, in my opinion, have been getting squeezed over time, right? Because this is really an antitrust lawsuit. They don't want a monopoly and they don't want price fixing and companies to collaborate on 3% as the standard. In reality, real estate commissions, it says it right on our listing contract, and it says it right on the buyer's agency contract, which we've had for years. It's just a lot of agents don't use it. All commissions are negotiable. So it says it right in the paperwork. So the lawsuit itself, locally, in my opinion, like for PA, I'll speak to PA first, because I've looked at it for Delaware and Maryland and Jersey as well, but it's kind of the same, just little nuances with the contracts. The commissions have always been negotiable. So
Right.
It's been the agents that have become glorified door openers, right? That have, get a lead on Zillow, go open a door, and they get paid 3%. Well, the consumer's starting to say, well, prices are too high. Affordability is an issue. We don't want you getting paid this much, right? I mean, that's my take on it, is really like if it's consumer driven, there could be other agendas. Maybe Zillow's behind it. No, I don't know. So the way I look at it is you get paid directly proportionate to the value you bring in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. If the agents understand how to display their value, communicate that clearly upfront to the client, and the client agrees to it, then the buyers in most markets in this area, I think they'd be fine paying a buyer 2.5%, 3% because it's such a challenging market.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So logistically, it's going to be an issue because the buyer's agent's going to have to somehow verify this before going out to show houses and then communicate back to the buyer, say, oh, this listing, they're not offering any buyer agent compensation.
Right.
Where before it was uniform. So it was listed on the MLS. You could see how much the compensation was. If it was below whatever you agreed on with your buyer, then you could let them know and that they'd have some sort of contribution to make up the difference.
Yep.
But we are starting to see some companies not offering buyer agent compensation. I think what you'll see is that it'll kind of end up getting paid back in some other way, like through a seller's assist.
It seems like it, right?
And then going back to my other conversation as being part of the board of realtors, there is some value to the board of realtors, but there's also some negatives. And as an agent, we're not ethically allowed to tie our commission to the negotiation. So
Say that one more time.
So as an agent, let's say, Drew, you're looking to buy a house. I'm going to represent you. I can't make, let's say we agree to 3%. You're going to pay me 3%. The seller is offering nothing. I can't make that part of the offer. It's not illegal.
Understood.
And it happens a lot in commercial real estate, but in residential real estate as a whole, if you're part of the board of realtors, in the code of ethics, it says that, I think it's, cooperation before compensation, basically. So you have to cooperate with your client before your compensation, meaning you're a waiter serving tables, and the person is saying, we're not going to pay you a tip at the end of this, but you still have to cooperate and bring us the food to the table. I mean, that's the way I look at it. And,
just thinking through that. So does that mean, like, the way you just explained it, does that mean if you were my buyer's agent, I'm trying to buy a house, we find something, it's listed for $300,000, and since that seller is not offering a buyer's agent commission, does that mean that we could not craft our offer going to the seller and say, hey, we're offering $309,000, but 9 of that is my commission?
Correct. With the exception that if you, the buyer, requested it, but me as the agent, I can't make my commission part of the negotiation. So you could say, Steve, I really want to make it, and then you could do it, but it would have to be at your own request, because otherwise I'm putting my compensation
that makes a little bit of sense.
Before cooperating with the other agent.
Okay.
So they want you to say, put your client first no matter what.
Got it.
That's really what they're saying in that whole. Now, I think that may change a little bit, because it's going to kind of tie the hands of the agent, where I think it should be part of the negotiation at this point, if that's what it is, because it's really a negotiation point. The other way you could do it is you could say, okay, Steve, I'm going to pay you a $9,000 commission, right? We've agreed that, let's just say it's versus percentage. Let's just say it's a flat fee of $9K on this house. $300,000 house, 3%, $9,000 commission. You're going to, I'm just using this as an example. You're going to offer $309 with a $9,000 seller's assist, right? And then you're going to pay me $9,000.
Yeah.
That's another way.
Yep.
You'll see that. The issue with that becomes is who gets hurt in that. The seller actually got the same exact amount.
Right.
And I see that the sellers, their net is not really going to change much in this. Where they think they're hurting the realtors, but I think in that scenario where you're going to get hurt is if you wanted a 3% seller's assist, you can't get that 3% seller's assist now with a conventional loan, because you're tapped out at the 3% max.
Right. Yep.
If it was FHA, maybe you could go up to 6, depending on the qualifications. But again, there's some calculations in there, but the buyer now has less purchasing power, and it's going to make it harder for them to get a house if they're paying out of pocket for the commission. And I mean, a lot of buyers don't have extra cash to put down, right? So
especially
it's definitely going to affect some things. Logistically, I think it's going to be a nightmare. Do I think the lawsuit makes sense? No, I don't think the lawsuit makes sense. But the agents are being commoditized through technology and now through some governance, right? So through more regulation, I think they're going to be commoditized even more. And I think you'll see actually more buyers going direct to the listing agent, which is even a whole nother issue, because that's going to create a lot of sellers dual agency.
Yep.
And if the listing agent was representing the seller, now the buyer comes in and it goes, hey, look, I'll work directly with you.
Yep.
It's ultimately who's winning in that situation? Really no one, because now there's not representation on both sides. You think you're saving the commission, but dual agency gets to become a gray area as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's There's a lot of pieces to it and everything. Like surface level, it seems very, very simple, but like almost everything, the deeper
Yeah.
you get into it, it's like, wow. And what's going to be the ultimate outcome? Probably that everything stays basically the same.
Yeah.
It's just a different way
form,
of operating.
right? Different standard practice. I do just stress to the agents, know your value, have the buyer's agency contract signed ahead of time, which they're going to mandate it. So do it anyway now before before it rolls out. And really, it's actually a great opportunity to look at what is your value in this business.
That was going to be my question to you. What is the opportunity that arises as a result of this? Because there has to be opportunity, to your point earlier. So that's it.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
I really do think that, like, to your point with technology and everything, like, as everything advances, it's going to become more apparent that any skills that you or I have, any knowledge that you have, for the most part, it's going to become irrelevant, right? Because access to information is going to become at an all-time high when everybody has, advanced AI bot in the form of their phone or whatever in the coming months, years, whatever it is. But the opportunity that presents is for the people that communicate well and connect well and essentially can sell well, because that's how I define sales, is really just communication, right? Understanding the needs and desires of whoever it is that you're working with and being able to clearly elaborate a message to them. Those are the people that are going to win. Those are the people that are going to succeed.
Absolutely.
So you have to up your communication skills to the next level, thereby giving more value to your buyers, to your sellers, to your investors, whoever, right? I think that's the path forward.
I think you're spot on with that.
So what's next for you?
What's next for me is starting a hard money fund and a commercial real estate fund. So, I've been researching the last 2 years, what's the best structure for my existing setup, and then in terms of all the things that I've done up until now that have gotten me to where I'm at, and then where do I want to be, and working backwards. And ultimately, my goal is to have $1 billion in real estate. So I love 10x is easier than 2x. I just listened to the audiobook, but I actually saw him speak in Orlando, and it was amazing. Benjamin Hardy. And I was like, all right, if I got to 10 million in real estate on my own. If I want to get to 100 million, that's 10x, and then 10x is that a billion, right? So I've got a long time frame. I'm a long-term thinker, 20 years, right? So let's say I do 10x in 10 years and then 10x again in another 10 years. That's very doable. It's very realistic. It's not an unrealistic goal. But the only way to me to get to that much real estate owned is through pooling money, through raising massive amounts of capital, because that could be done multiple generations, but it's really hard to do that in one generation without using other people's money, right? So raising private capital, marrying that with institutional money, and then having the two machines go side by side with hard money as a outlet for being on the paper side of the business, and then owning the bricks and sticks in a fund as well.
I love that. I
can go more into that, but that's where I'm heading. That's the goal.
That's big picture. No, I love that. You got to think big, and a lot of people are afraid to think big. That's
Yeah, I mean, I tell people, if you don't have a compelling future that's pulling you, then you're actually reacting to your past experiences. So if you don't design something in your future that is more compelling than all your past experiences, fears, and roadblocks, then you're just going to be stuck doing the same thing over and over again. So when you feel like you have those same days over and over, it's like Groundhog Day, it's patterns, you're not running towards something, you don't have a big enough why.
That's deep.
You don't have a big enough goal.
That's deep. How do you help somebody to gain clarity as to what that might be for them? Because I've struggled with this.
Well, I saw you, the reason we reconnected was over a mutual friend's celebration of life. So to me, death is our friend. Death is our biggest reminder that what we have is temporary. This is not permanent. It will not be here. And it's actually, you could look at it a couple different ways. Like I believe in God. I believe there's an afterlife. to me, that gives me a lot of encouragement to go full out in this lifetime. Another great book is Chase the Lion. So it's setting a God-sized goal that's unachievable without God's help. Like, how cool is that to say, I couldn't achieve this goal without God's help in my background? And whether you're religious or not, make something bigger than yourself, because if you live a life of just what you want and what's selfish for you, that's a really small life.
Yeah.
That to me is not a life worth living. And I think death is our friend in terms of showing us that when we lose people, I lost my dad like a year and a half ago. That was a big wake up call to be like, all right, you've done well, but get your shit together. Like, really go after this. Go for something that's worthy of your time. And we're kind of, most people are just floating through life. It's a shame because I think it starts with self-awareness. Mm-hmm. It starts with being able to recognize that the thoughts that you have, you were born into, and they're not even yours, right? And where you have to create some sort of gap in your thinking to give yourself even the space to think about, who am I? What do I want in this lifetime? What do I want to leave behind? What's the impact I want to have? What's my legacy? Like, if you start asking bigger questions, you're going to have a bigger life.
I love that. And I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah, thanks, man.
You're right, though. I mean, I lost my father 7 years ago, and that was one of my big takeaways from that as well. It was realizing the temporary nature of everything and looking at everything it has to be big, right? Everything that we do has to be big, because if not, if you're not impacting people, and that's why I go back to that, it doesn't matter. Well, they kind of correlate, so I'm going to contradict myself, right? But if you build a net worth of $1 billion, right? Or you have 10 billion in assets, it doesn't matter if you're not making a difference in anybody's life. Now, the contradictory nature to that is it's impossible to grow anything that big or that meaningful without making an impact in somebody's life. And people like to hate on the rich and shit on them and say, oh, anybody that has more than X amount of dollars in net worth or cash or whatever is a horrible person, and they offer no value to society. And that couldn't be further from the truth.
I agree, yeah.
Because at a certain point, it's like, well, I simply don't need to work another day in my life, and I could be selfish and greedy and just go sit on a beach with my family and never have any of them work ever, right? But that's not really making a difference or an impact in anybody's life, and it's certainly not living up to your potential in any way, shape, or form. You know what I mean? So
I 100%. I mean, I feel like you're taking the thoughts right out of my head. Yep. Yeah, impact's big, man. And when I say the $1 billion goal, it's not to sleep on a mattress full of money.
I get that.
It's literally just a measure of impact, just like you said. Because money's just energy, and it's really just where's that energy flowing? If you're a good person and you have a lot of money, you're going to do good with it. If you're a shitty person and you have a lot of money, you're not going to do good with it. So
that's right.
What I've found is that the more that I help other people with the abundance mindset, it's more about the mindset and what the money does. Because to me, I look at money as modern day slavery, right? So that's the way I look at money is,
okay.
Every empire was built with some sort of hierarchy of individuals, and a lot of it was built on slavery. And to me, because like what I was saying about being an entrepreneur, my search is for freedom. And I feel like people are in prison when they're running their lives chasing that dollar. So the way I look at it is, if they can break out of that prison cell of chasing money, then they can actually live the life they want to live. And we're in an abundance of money. We're in an abundant country. We're in an abundant economy. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't feel that way. It sure feels like we're chasing money. And I'm in that rat race still, right? Even though, like you said, like I could probably sit back and put my feet up, but it's that wiring. So what I'm really after is the impact of transforming the human mindset from scarcity and lack to abundance and wealth. And if you break down scarcity and lack versus abundance and wealth, it's really fear and love. Like if
Yeah.
love is abundant, fear, lack, scared, right? It's like, so you see that human treadmill, and then you look at money, it's completely made up concept, and it's leveraged by, you know, the world basically to create production
Yeah.
for control and power.
Yeah.
So we're all under that umbrella, and we're born into that monopoly game, but we don't know the rules.
Don't know the rules, and even the things that I would venture to say that wealthy people know better than, you know, your median income household. But regardless, it's almost like from the traditional education schooling system, it's not taught at all. Like nothing from a financial perspective is really ingrained into kids.
No, I heard, I'm sure it's out there somewhere, but our entire education system was actually designed by Henry Ford to create factory workers.
Which makes sense.
So it's an outdated model, right, to fulfill employee roles, and it has to be revamped at some point. But like I did my yoga teacher
Good
training.
name drop. I like that. Revamp. Yeah, my man.
We got to revamp. We have to revamp 365 days of the year.
I love it.
So when I did my yoga teacher training in 2011, and it was the first time they ever taught me to breathe properly or stand up properly. I was like, oh my God, I'm like, at this age, I'm just learning how to breathe. I'm just learning how to stand. They don't teach you that at school.
It's a weird thought,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, we do that all the time.
Yeah.
We don't learn different things. We don't learn to look someone in the eye. We don't learn to shake someone's hand. We don't learn people skills in school. Like, I mean, you do indirectly,
Yeah.
but it's not like a class on that.
Right. Right.
You know, they should have more classes. I understand like English and everything. I was terrible at reading and writing, but communication.
Yeah. Totally
Communication courses at a young age, how to not just talk, but have a message delivered. And then also how to listen.
Because they're different things.
Right? How to listen.
Yeah.
How to listen to a message and let it soak in.
Yep.
There's so many things that they could revamp, but 100% financial education at a young age, I think is huge. And then more importantly, I think what I would do if I could take over the whole entire school board, I would have more specialized schools. So, you know, not necessarily like school district by school district, but specialized schools at young ages, because human innovation is amazing and fascinating.
Yeah.
Like, look at what Elon Musk is doing. Well, there's probably another brilliant brain out there just like his that just never got the right opportunities.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally agree.
And when you put people all in the same boat rowing in the same direction, a very powerful thing happens where it actually increases where they could have ever gotten to.
Mm-hmm.
Like we can't expand past existing human evolution until someone hits that, right? Like
That's
the
right.
4-minute mile, and then 5 more people did it.
And everyone does.
And then it's now it's a normal thing. And now it's not even a big deal, right?
Yep.
Where same concept goes, if they did that with young kids with flexible sponge-like minds, imagine what the future of humanity could look like in terms of what we're capable of. We're capable of so much more
I agree.
than just filling an employee position, sitting in a seat, you know, pushing buttons in front of a computer.
And I think that in the very near future, that's one of the most promising futures that AI and tech advancement kind of teases at, because why are schools built the way they are? Like you said, yes, to build factory workers and everything, but take it a step further than that, it's really difficult. It's really challenging to make a customized learning program for every kid, for every student. Like, I was a terrible student, right? Like, I have ADHD like crazy, man. So I was never going to be a good student, right? But
I think anyone that says that, they're probably smarter and they're just bored in class.
Well, but see, that's a big piece of it though, right? Like, if there was an advanced AI system that could break you down and understand everything about you and how you learn as a child and figure out what interests you, because that's a big piece of it, right? Like, you have to be interested in what you're learning and everything. And it took me 20 years to learn how I learned, but I know now. But with technology advancing, when you can have an individualized learning program for every kid, dude, it's
pretty cool, right?
That's pretty awesome. And that's not like 10, 20 years into the future. I think that
I
is
thought we were
very
supposed to
feasible.
talk about real estate here. Now
I
we're
know,
talking about
I know.
revamping.
Well,
we're
it
revamping
all
the
ties
education
together,
system.
man. It all ties
I know,
together.
it
It's
does.
interesting.
But you're right. I mean, we're not taught to think. That's the biggest thing.
I know.
And we're not even taught to learn. We're basically just taught to regurgitate information, which is not learning. That's memorization.
Yeah.
I mean, learning something, it's like the information. Then you have there's 3 levels. It's like the first step is just information. Then you have knowledge, right? When the knowledge, then you have wisdom. And that's like the application of the knowledge for the best use of what it is. So if there's like, you want to get somewhere, and you look on the map and there is the shortest distance, but what if there's another route that is a more scenic route and you want that? That's wisdom. Yeah. That's taking like what you know and then adding
real world experience.
And then adding in experience to it to make it maximize it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where, I mean, this is, you're getting me to go off on a total tangent here on my thoughts. But,
story of my life. That's okay. That's okay.
You're good at this, so.
Well, let me ask you one final question.
Sure.
Somebody that does want to get started in real estate investing today, what would be your advice to them?
Definitely connect with other people who are doing it. Selfishly, if it's local, you could reach out to us or you could reach out to Drew. But, we have over 100 agents. Most all of them are trained on working with investors, so they can help walk through, like, what are your goals and where do you want to buy and what's your finances look like and how can we help you? So we have a good team for that. And if anyone's looking to just learn, I mean, obviously Bigger Pockets is huge. There's a lot of information on there. Follow some people, find someone that you jive with and you like, follow them. But don't get stuck in the analysis paralysis. So take some information, like we were just talking about it.
Take action.
And then take action. And then you get the experience. And then that gives you the wisdom. And then you do it again and again. And you fail a lot and you make a lot of mistakes, but you get up and you keep going and you'll get good at it.
Dude, I love that. That's great advice. That's great feedback. A lot of people are so afraid of failure or things going wrong. And I think one of the best ways to get over that is to solidify to somebody. It's like, yeah, you're going to fuck up. Things are going to go wrong, but you'll be okay.
You'll be all right.
And that is where you get your wisdom and put one foot in front of the other. Let's go.
And that's a life worth living, taking on your biggest fears.
Love that, brother.
And the challenges. So
love that.
Thank you.
This has been great. Thank you for coming, Steve Seymour. Where can people find you?
We'll post a link below because I don't know which one we're going to send up.
Post a link below. I love that. We'll put it in the YouTube description.
I mean, it's VRArealty.com. You can look up our company and reach out and we'll connect you with one of the agents.
Love that. Thanks so much, brother.
Thanks.